What happens when a natural disaster hits your Airbnb while guests are still inside? That's every host's nightmare. Guests in danger, reservations you now have to cancel, income suddenly gone, and an insurance claim that could take weeks or even months to sort out. We just lived this. Two 8,000-pound trees fell through one of our cabins during a storm while guests were staying there. And even though we had short term rental insurance, we learned very quickly what Airbnb investors need to do immediately to protect their guests, their property, and their cash flow. In this episode, we're walking you through the exact steps we took after disaster struck, from evacuating our guests, documenting damage, working with Airbnb, filing the insurance claim, saving proof of lost income, and preparing for the out-of-pocket costs most investors just don't think about. By the end, you'll know how to respond calmly, protect your investment, and avoid the costly mistakes if an emergency ever hits your Airbnb. Let's jump in.
The purpose of insurance is to transfer the financial risk of fire, storms, and lawsuits from you to an insurance company in exchange for an annual premium. As an Airbnb investor, Airbnb's air cover takes the financial risk out of guests damaging your property. But what happens when there's a natural disaster? A few weeks ago, we had a severe thunderstorm and tornado touchdown in the town where most of our Airbnb portfolio is located. We have insurance, specifically short-term rentals, but we learned a few things during our journey that we want to share with you today. My phone rings 6:46 p.m. Thursday night of Memorial Day weekend. I don't usually pick up numbers that I don't recognize, but I picked this one up, and it was my Airbnb guest. Sounded composed, but flustered. Immediately tells me that a tree has fallen through the house with them in it. Mortified. Of course, first question is everybody okay? Yeah, we're okay. He starts to tell me a little bit about the house. Hold on, you have dogs? The dog's okay. All right. He's telling me a little about the house. And my first instinct is to continue down that and let him tell me about turning off the power. And I realized right away that these guests, they can't stay there, right? They live 11 hours away. Most of our guests live a couple hours away. In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, I guess they can just go. But realizing that they've got two dogs and live 11 hours away, we've got to find them a place to be. We've got to get them out of here.
And having a natural disaster, we're like, which cabins have power? Are there trees across roads? How are we getting anybody anywhere?
And luckily, it was a Thursday night, and we did have a place available. And I was able to quickly tell him, we've got a place right down the road. It's only about 15 minutes away. It's equally as nice, and you can move there. They got there. They called very happy. This place is gorgeous. They could have been hysterical. They could have been demanding money. But in the way we handled it with them and moving them and their dogs and being empathetic to their safety and finding them a new place, they were cool and composed. They were like, this place is fantastic. We love it here.
And they left a 5-star review about their week-long stay saying, the first 6 days were great. It was secluded. We had the best time in the hot tub. And even though 2 trees fell through the house while we were there, the host did a great job taking care of us.
In their haste, they left their food in the refrigerator and I think one of their bags behind. Mm-hmm. And the storm had passed at that point. It was one of these kind of quick
ratio type things.
And we were able to send the housekeeper by, get their food out of the fridge, get their bag and bring it to them. And it turned out to be a great experience for the guests.
Yeah, we were blessed to have great guests. We were blessed that Cullen picked up the phone and we were able to prioritize the guests, be empathetic, and take care of the situation as best we could in such a weird situation. In 10 years of hosting, we've ever had something like this happen. So after you've taken care of your guests and been empathetic, what you need to do next is take photos and videos of the damage as soon as humanly possible. So in our circumstance, we don't live near our Airbnbs, and our handyman came up and assessed this situation for us. He realized even with his chainsaw, these trees were so big, there's no way he could move them. But he did take photos of the damage from the outside and was brave enough to go inside, documenting the damage of the trees through the ceilings, the drywall falling, all of the mess that was inside. And he's like, is there anything I can take out of here for you? This was our first cabin. It was our personal cabin before we became Airbnb hosts. And so I had bought really nice art for this place. And Keith was kind enough to grab the art off the walls because I was really worried about water damage, mold, all kinds of stuff. And his photos and videos, he took a lot, which more is better. You don't want a video and a photo. You kind of want everything possible. They really gave us a better understanding of the level of damage and what needed to be done to salvage what was left of the cabin.
And next, I knew with insurance, you want to get started sooner than later. So quickly reached out to my insurance agents who pointed me towards the online claims portal. And we began to upload photos and descriptions to the claims portal, and that got our claims started. It ended up taking us about 2 weeks to hear back from the claims department and another 2 weeks to get an estimate. Through this process, this was a little bit of a frustrating month. I came to realize, and I'll share with you, that your insurance agent or broker is on the sales side of things, and they don't have much control or influence over the claims department. They were able to kind of jump in towards the end and send some messages for me, but your agent isn't the person who's assessing damage and providing an estimate. And that was kind of frustrating. It ended up taking us basically a month to get a full estimate back.
And I'm just like, we don't even live there. But if this was our primary residence and there's 2 trees through the roof and you have to wait 4 weeks to even get an estimate.
Well, let's jump in there. What we did do was we remediated the trees right away. So we got on the phone, we found some tree professionals and great company. They were actually out there that night with saws. They ended up bringing in cranes and it took them a couple of days. But we were there to remediate the initial damage and get it tarped up without insurance approval. But to move forward with the repairs, we needed to go through the claims process.
Yeah. And it was incredibly frustrating. And we have great insurance and know the people there. So just brace yourself for that sort of situation. Key takeaway here is you must have a short-term rental insurance policy. Airbnbs require a different kind of policy than a home that you live in. If you do not have short-term rental insurance, make sure to seek out coverage that works in your particular state for your short-term rental to make sure you are covered for natural disasters, home damage, guest accidents, and potential lawsuits. Do it now. Do not wait. This is not something to be like, oh, we'll get around to it, because when disaster strikes, you need to know that you are completely covered. There are 2 big players right now in the short-term rental insurance space. That's Steadily and Proper Insurance. And you can also check out CBIZ, so CBIZ, if your property is valued over $750,000. That being said, it's wise to shop around for insurance available again in your state, because certain states have certain laws and coverage situations.
There's a few questions that you need to ask your insurance company if you're not going with a short-term rental specific company like Proper. And you want to ask if the policy specifically covers the business use as a short-term rental property. Also want to know if you're covered if you own multiple Airbnbs. Many will cover just your first one. Also, does the policy provide coverage if a guest is injured while renting in my property? The tree had actually fallen in an area where the guest very easily could have fell into a bedroom. So,
right. It could have killed a guest, their children, or if it had fallen somewhere else, crushed their vehicle. So there would have been a lot of guest impact.
Right. Another question is, if something like a water leak happens while the property is vacant, does the policy cover that type of damage? And also what the policy coverage is for rebuilding the home in case of total loss.
Yeah, those are the key questions to ask. The next thing you need to do is safeguard your property as soon as possible. As Cullen said, we didn't wait for insurance to tell us how much money they were going to give us, because we had massive trees through the roof of a property. So we called a tree company who was recommended by our handyman. They removed the trees, and we told you that was quite the process. And they tarped the roof and put sandbags down so the torrential rain wouldn't come pouring in and do even more water and mold damage that would have to be remediated. So, pro tip, have a savings account for emergency situations and repairs. It's also really wise to have a list of area tree companies, roofers, and flood remediation companies before you need to call them. And I know you're like, I'm new to the area, I don't know. Ask your housekeeper, ask your handyman, ask around at the hardware stores. Having local recommendations makes all the difference between getting a realistic quote in a short period of time and getting an astronomical quote for somebody that can maybe get around to helping you in 2 months.
Something else we learned is your insurance will give you reimbursement for rental loss recovery. And I had known that, but I've had to figure out exactly what to do about it. So I was able to go in immediately and download my reservations. I did it for a month, but I'm going to recommend through this process of what we learned, go and download any reservations that you have for the next 2 months. because when you go to start canceling those reservations, then you won't have that information. You won't have what the amount was.
Then there won't be a record to show that loss to your insurance company. You can
Right.
say, oh, well, I had $4,000 worth of bookings in that month. And if you can't show them tangibly that, then you're not going to get that reimbursement.
The other nuance to this also is its actual loss. So it's not what you potentially would have earned. It's only the bookings that you have booked at that time. So that's kind of an interesting bit of nuance to it. Another thing to note, during this process, I was offered an insurance liability umbrella of $1 to $5 million. I wasn't sure about that, so I spoke to my brother-in-law, who's been a commercial insurance agent for decades, and he advised me take the maximum amount on both. This protects your personal home from being taken. It covers legal fees. If guests sue us personally, despite our Airbnb portfolio being held in an LLC, you've got that umbrella level of protection.
Peace of mind.
Next, we had to call Airbnb and inform him of the damage, an emergency, and ask them to cancel the upcoming reservations.
And if you don't know this, if you as a host cancel a guest reservation, even if it's because of a natural disaster, you will lose your Superhost status for a calendar year. So you cannot and should not cancel the guests. You need to work through Airbnb.
Right. So called them up, told them what was going on, told them the reservations that I wanted to cancel. They were pretty adamant about getting some documentation. So luckily I had just finished that claim and got an email with a claim number. And so with that documentation and photos, they were able to cancel with no penalty, no loss of Superhost status. I think there's even fines for canceling. Having the photos and a claim ready when you call Airbnb to cancel these reservations.
Another thing we learned was that Airbnb just cancels the reservations for the guests. They don't tell them why. So we ended up sending a message explaining that, hey, we had 2 trees fall through this cabin. It's unlivable and unsafe. And we're so sorry, because we had people who were,
Some people were pissed.
angry. They're like, would you just cancel my reservation? And even after we told them, one lady was like, I wish you had told me sooner. I'm like, well, the trees just fell through the house. I'm really sorry about your vacation. I'm also equally really sorry about the house and the whole situation. But anyway, that's one thing to know. Another thing is, be sure to block your calendar after Airbnb cancels the reservations. We just assumed they would automatically block the calendar, and they didn't. So on top of having all the angry people who Airbnb canceled the reservation and didn't tell them why, we also had several new guests immediately book the open dates. And we had to explain the situation, go through the whole process with Airbnb again to cancel their reservations. So learn from our interesting journey through this process.
We're learning together. So the next step was to start gathering quotes. Most insurance companies want to see a few quotes for repairing the damage to the property. I got 3 roofing quotes, 2 of which were in like the $12,000 mark, and then the third was $25,000. Obviously, that company knew this was going to be an insurance job. They're swinging for the fences. So I'm glad I had 2 that aligned. If I only had 1 quote or 2 quotes, we wouldn't have known which one was off, right? So you can't rush an insurance adjuster.
We tried.
But we were able to upload these quotes and have them ready. It helps them do their job. They go out and they figure things their own way. But he was also able to reference the quotes, and maybe there was something in a quote that he had missed.
Like the trusses being cracked and broken.
And was able to make sure that we were getting proper monies allocated for each part of the job. And that's another kind of pro tip. Be prepared to manage a host of trades and contractors. We've got to coordinate a roofer, an installation company, drywall restoration, paints, flooring. We also may need electrical work. So it's going to be a lot here for the next couple of weeks. But again, having those relationships with some of these contractors before emergencies makes this process less daunting. We have an installation company that we've worked with several times, drywall, painter, flooring companies that we've worked with, and we're happy to be Johnny on the spot. I know there's a problem. You're a great customer. We'll be out there, and particularly our carpenter and drywall people.
They're amazing.
They know that they're going to be there as soon as we're ready for them.
And we can trust them to do a good job and charge a fair rate.
Because the way it worked with the insurance also is they didn't have me go and do all the work and then ask for reimbursement,
which is a blessing.
They went and figured out how much they thought the job should cost, and they were pretty good about it, like down to what cleanup costs would be and moving furniture while doing different parts. So it was going to be just a $46,000 flat check for us to then manage efficiently across all these trades.
And if you're freaking out, if this ever happens to you and you just don't have the bandwidth to do that, there was funds allocated for a GC to be hired, but certain things aren't being done to what we think, like the insulation isn't being completely replaced, only part of it was paid for. So we're using the funds for a GC, because that's what Colin's going to do, to take care of the insulation.
The second half of it.
Yeah, a few other things that are just like the right way to have the job done. Another thing to be prepared to do is to document the smaller losses of personal property, things like furniture, mattresses, linens, art, light fixtures, because again, you can be reimbursed for replacing them, and that can be added on top of whatever
the initial estimate was, right?
Yeah. And those things add up quickly, particularly mattresses, beds, that sort of thing. And if you just have someone come in and clear it out, you don't have a record of what was originally there. Another thing is, it's important to know you may have to cancel more future guest bookings and cover the mortgage of your property without income for a month, 2 months, or even more. Having savings set aside for emergencies, like I mentioned before, helps you cover the mortgage and initial costs without even more stress in an already really stressful situation. We are still very much in the thick of the situation. We just received our reimbursement check from the insurance company, and roof repairs begin next week. A rough estimate of how long repairs will take until we have the cabin guest ready is another 3 to 4 weeks. It's the first time we're dealing with a situation like this in over 10 years of hosting, and we're purposely sharing everything we learn with you so you're more prepared should a natural disaster impact your Airbnb investment.
So there you have it. You now know what to do and document to protect your cash flows when disaster shuts down your Airbnb. You also learn the importance of short-term rental specific insurance and what to expect as you navigate the insurance claim and reconstruction process after major damage affects your Airbnb. Do you feel like there are things that you don't know about becoming an Airbnb investor and you would benefit from having an expert coach guide you through the process, setting you up for success? That's what we do. Head over to hostcoach.co and book a free 30-minute coaching session with us so we can pinpoint exactly what you need help with. Remember,
our joy is in your success.